Welcome to the Applied Blockchain podcast, where blockchain technology and innovation are in the spotlight. My name is Adi Ben-Ari, and I'm the founder and CEO of Applied Blockchain, and I'll be your host as we dive into relaxed conversations with industry experts and thought leaders to get their views on what they're building, the Web3 ecosystem and its transformative impact on the modern world. John Hallahan from Fireblocks, welcome to the Applied Blockchain podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, Adi. Really looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, good. Right. Assuming not everybody has heard about Fireblocks, which I think is unrealistic. I think most people have. But just in case they haven't, just tell us a bit about the company and what it does in the space.
Yeah, sure. So Fireblocks, for those of you who aren't aware, is a technology company, a software platform that enables all types of companies to build in the digital asset space. Typically Fireblocks will be known well for a custody solution. So having a very scalable wallet solution for both creating wallets for yourselves and on behalf of customers, and also for key management. So Fireblocks is kind of pioneering in the digital asset space for championing MPC as a means for securing your private keys. And then also, after that, Fireblocks has built a number of additional applications on top. So we have a tokenization offering where you can issue and transfer digital assets. We have a payments offering where you can essentially orchestrate different types of on-chain payments, and everything around Web3 as well. So whether that's accessing DeFi, staking, and other types of activities that are really built on that kind of strong base layer of wallet infrastructure and key management.
Right. Okay. So that's quite a lot. Let's unpack that kind of one step at a time, especially for people who might not be familiar. Okay, so wallets. I know about MetaMask, right? Because I bought a few NFTs, which are not worth much now. And maybe I know about Ledger because I knew that MetaMask is a browser extension, and I thought, well, I've got crypto here that's starting to accrue value, and so maybe I need a hardware wallet. So I've got this kind of USB type thing or Bluetooth, and that's my hardware wallet. Why do I need Fireblocks?
Sure. So I think anyone that's dabbled in crypto and digital assets will know that it's not a very easy user experience from a retail perspective. So, and things that you mentioned there, you've got hardware wallets that are USBs. You've got very small UIs where it's quite hard to discern where you're sending the assets. You send an asset to an address and you're not sure whether that's actually, it's a legitimate address or not. So when you think about the enterprise context of dealing with digital assets, that's not scalable for an organization. It's not something, which is very cyber forward. So really what Fireblocks provides is enterprises a very easy way to abstract a lot of that complexity and have a very easy user interface or API to actually create wallets at scale, to transfer assets in a much safer way, but to exchanges and other counterparties, and then fundamentally to take away those UX problems that you would have in the retail context when you're looking at B2B. Okay, so breaking that down a little bit, let's say I work for a large organization, and which Applied Blockchain will be one day, of course.
And the organization owns some digital assets. I mean, it makes sense that we don't want an employee walking around with, say, their mobile phone, where the assets are effectively housed in that employee's single mobile phone,
absolutely,
or ledger or whatever. So we need some kind of enterprise solution. So then the assets are for all intents and purposes, sitting in the organization, and the keys are managed somehow, and that's obviously what Fireblocks takes care of. And then presumably there are employees who have access to that, who can authorize actions on the company's assets.
Absolutely.
That's how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a very base level, you've got the wallet infrastructure, and you've got the key management, which manages how you sign transactions. And then we've a number of layers of security that are built on top. One is what we call our transaction authorization policy. And that, if anyone's worked with a bank, it's very clear that they've got different 4 eyes processes. They've got different approval levels and approval groups. So really that allows a lot of our companies who work with us who are of enterprise grade to basically build the same compliance processes into digital assets that they have with other types of platforms, whether it's SAP or CRMs and that kind of stuff. And then I guess the other part around the use of MPC is that we also use hardware to secure the key shares. So Intel SGX is what we use to secure the key shares that are held on Fireblocks side. And then our customer then holds their key share on their side, either an Intel SGX on their cloud device or in an on-prem instance. So really trying to build multiple levels of cyber defense. Yeah. That means that, sending assets to the wrong place, having wrong people access your assets, and ultimately sending them to nefarious addresses is something which isn't possible with the system.
Right. Okay. Super interesting. And anyone who's listened to this podcast before will have heard the interview we did with Intel.
Yeah.
All about SGX as well. So that's something that we used extensively in our product as well in Silent Data. So that's something that we know all about. You mentioned MPC.
Mm-hmm.
What's MPC?
Yeah, so very simply, for kind of the non-technical audience, of which I'm also a member, MPC stands for multi-party computation. And for those without a PhD in cryptography, it's kind of hard to understand the very technical level. But at a very simple level, it allows you to split a private key into different shares or different key shares, essentially eliminating the single point of compromise with a private key. So obviously, if a lot of organizations, if you're using other types of solutions, might have a single private key, which a single user might own. So really, it eliminates a single user having access to that private key. And fundamentally, it eliminates that single point of compromise with dealing with private keys.
Right. Okay. And I guess if I think about there's a couple of paradigms we could imagine for that with blockchain. One is kind of multi-sig,
mm-hmm.
right? Which would be we have two different keys. They both each one signs a transaction that goes to the blockchain, that's mm-hmm. to a smart contract. The smart contract checks that it's got one signature from each key and mm-hmm. then goes ahead and does something. That's multi-sig. I guess with MPC, what we're doing is we're having two keys come together through some cryptography
mm-hmm.
that then produces a key as if it's come from a signature as if it's come from a single key.
Yes, that's completely correct. And we talk about the Fireblocks MPC algorithm. So MPC was kind of it's a technology which already existed, but Fireblocks have added our own flavor with our own algorithm, which is now open source, which is called MPC CMP. So it's our research and development team have built it out. And essentially what that allows you to do with MPC is with a 3 of 3 model, it allows you to do all that computation off-chain.
Yep.
So when you're comparing it to something like Multi-Sig, where you've got multiple types of signatures which are on-chain, which cost fees or gas across the different blockchains, what we allow you to do is use that computation off-chain and have a single transaction. So in terms of scalability versus multi-sig, it's something which you can scale to many transactions without the prohibitive cost of using multi-sig in that context.
Right. So you can... Sorry, take me through that again.
Sure. So the rounds of signing for the MPC protocol are something which happens off-chain.
Right. Yeah.
So there's only a single transaction, which happens on chain.
Okay. So it's efficient in terms of
it's efficient in terms of the amount of times you're writing to the chain.
Yeah.
So you're not essentially spending money every time you write to the various chains.
Got it. And I guess the other thing about MPC signing, from the blockchain's perspective, it looks like a single key sign this. And that simplifies things. It means you don't have to modify or do anything special on the blockchain side. And also blockchains that might not support multi-sig in different ways will also...
Absolutely. And, what a lot of our customers see is that they're, it's different types of multi-sig across different chains. You're changing for supporting new chains. MPC allows you to add multiple new chains and have the same process for the signing, which is something which is quite unique with the way
Okay. We did an interesting MPC proof of concept, by the way, which was not related to keys.
Okay.
It was actually related to calculation. We did pricing. So we did this in the shipping industry,
mm-hmm.
where each ship broker was doing deals,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to know what's the industry price, what's the current price. So each party fed their transactions into this MPC algorithm. The transactions were never shared with anyone,
mm-hmm.
no central party, not with each other. only the MPC cryptographic bits, and then everybody would get each other's cryptographic bits, put them together, and get the price.
Okay,
right?
Interesting.
Yes,
yeah.
We thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
So you basically get the price without having to go through a third party that sees the whole market before you do, or just sees the whole market, as you have pricing services today. We thought it was fantastic. In practice, some market participants thought it was fantastic, others didn't.
Yeah.
Because the smaller guys could now have more transparency about the market price. The bigger guys were part of the big deals, so they already knew. They were the ones moving the market.
Yeah.
And they didn't really want everybody else to see the. So sometimes these things are
not for everyone.
Not for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a lesson for us. But yeah, just it shows you really the power of MPC technology as well. Okay, good. So that's the key management side of it, right? The wallet, and that was originally the core product.
Yeah. So like the core market was it was liquidity providers and OTC desks in the crypto space who were moving large amounts of crypto, but in a very inefficient manner. Using hardware devices and qualified custodians. So operating a principle of actually custodying your assets yourself in direct custody, and then having the kind of operational efficiencies of leveraging Fireblocks is something which was kind of a key product market fit for that particular use case.
Yeah. Okay. And then what happened after that, just in terms of kind of the roadmap, the market?
Well, I think
Fireblocks perspective.
I think like the ethos of Fireblocks as a company is to allow every company to safely manage and transact with digital assets and cryptocurrencies. So to that end, it became clear that a lot of the banking use cases that were happening around crypto custody, tokenization, settlement, also needed that infrastructure. And I guess at a base level for digital assets applications, you need a wallet, you need a key, and you need a way to essentially interact with the blockchain. Fireblocks provides a very scalable wallet, a very secure way to manage the key, and abstracts a lot of that complexity of actually, writing to a blockchain, scanning mempools, all of those types of things. So really in a banking context then as well, it's an infrastructure which makes a lot of sense for BNY Mellon to build their crypto custody offering. So BNY Mellon, the first banking customer of Fireblocks, have launched their crypto custody offering, leveraging Fireblocks as a technology. It's also a way for Revolut to kind of scale their operations. So going from manual operations of people having access to keys and different types of logins, abstracting all of that away by leveraging Fireblocks to access liquidity, create wallets, and ultimately scale operations across new types of assets.
So just paring that a little bit back from a technical perspective. So if I've got the Fireblocks solution for signing, I've now got a signed transaction. That needs to be sent to the blockchain.
Yes.
So I guess what you're saying is part of the solution is actually connecting and sending that to the blockchain.
Exactly. It's abstracting all of that complexity of managing your own node as well. So Fireblocks hosts node infrastructure for all of the public blockchains that we support, and essentially we send the transaction to the chain, and also, scan the mempools for any incoming transactions as well. So, a lot of that complexity for banks of
why do you need to scan the mempools? What is that?
To it's scan for any incoming transactions.
Okay, but you can report back to
it. Exactly.
Okay. Wow, okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And then what else happens after? What else on top of that? Or is it?
Yeah, sure. So like a big piece for us is on tokenization. Yeah. So we've been working on tokenization projects over the course of the last 18 months with a number of different organizations. Good examples of that would be the work that we've done with the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, issuing a government bond with the Ministry of Finance and the Office of the Accountant General in Israel. So that's an example of the issuance of a government bond on-chain, but also the delivery versus payment of the bond units and a payment token in the context of this use case.
That's on a public chain?
That was on a private EVM-based chain.
Okay.
Yeah, for that particular instance. But I think the beauty of working in a private EVM-based chain is that actually porting it over to public is something which is it's an easy process to see a path to public for that sense.
Right.
And when we look at tokenization, based on the projects that we were done with the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange and launching stable coins with the likes of ANZ Bank and National Australia Bank in Australia, we actually made an acquisition of a company in September of last year called Blockfold, who are essentially a smart contract development company at the kind of cutting edge of these tokenization use cases. And what that essentially enables us to do. very much like you in the context of discussions that we've had. So it's really a mechanism for us to build bespoke, but then also to launch our own smart contract standards, of which we've now launched our first three Fireblocks reference implementations of some EVM-based smart contracts.
And what are these? What are these standards? I mean, what do they cover? What are they?
Yeah, sure. So we're building on the kind of main ERC standards. So ERC 20, 721, 1155, and essentially what we're adding are based on the work that Blockful was doing with many different banks and organizations. So ANZ Bank, National Australia Bank, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, the BIS in their Project Mariana. What were the pieces from an enterprise perspective that were really important across those token standards, and essentially adding those pieces of functionality out of the box for Fireblocks customers.
Okay, so this is, I guess, sort of regulated tokens.
Absolutely.
The type of functionality that's needed for those. Okay, and these are standards that will go through, I guess, the EIP process, the Ethereum. Is that the vision?
I think the vision is for them to be our flavor of those ERC standards with some additional functionality. Yeah. They're obviously externally audited smart contracts as well. Yeah. So that's more on the marketplace side from our own smart contracts. Yeah. Another thing that we've launched in collaboration with or as a result of the Blockful acquisition is our tokenization marketplace. Mm-hmm. And essentially that's a mechanism for Fireblocks to list the smart contracts of our partners. So Tokeny, which is a very popular smart contract provider in the space, ERC 643, they're kind of leading that standard. Yeah. Bitbond, and then Securrency and Securitize as well in the US. So really our kind of ethos is the smart contract standards that we have aren't always going to be best of fit for purpose for our customers. So having as many different smart contract standards from our partners in our marketplace means that you can choose if you're tokenizing a fund or you're launching a stablecoin, you get to choose the right smart contract for you, but leverage a very secure way to deploy that smart contract using Fireblocks.
Okay, good. Anything else in the sort of portfolio, in the Fireblocks portfolio that we haven't covered?
Oh, well, how long do we have? I guess the other big piece is around payments. So Fireblocks has launched a payments offering last year. We're working with some of the largest payment service providers in the world. So WorldPay and Checkout.com being two of them. And really what Fireblocks, our ethos for payments is that blockchain is just another payments rail. So, you have ACH and Fedwire in the US. You have SEPA Instant in the EU. You've got faster payments in the UK. But for certain corridors, digital asset-based payments leveraging stablecoins makes sense. So what we're working to do with those clients is basically build payment flows on-chain, leveraging stablecoins in the Fireblocks infrastructure to have faster payments, easier settlement, better remittances.
Right, but just to unpack that, so where is there a particular blockchain where the payments actually happen, or is that?
It depends on the use case. So some of our customers they're using USDC on Solana. Other customers are using Stellar. Obviously the lower fee blockchain.
Okay. So you're kind of almost agnostic of where that happens, but you're building flows on top that are off chain. Is that right?
We're building essentially payment flows where you select where your on ramp is, what the asset type is, what blockchain it sits on, and where it off ramps. And essentially, you can automate that payment flow using our APIs, essentially. So we're calling it the dynamic flow builder. So it essentially enables you to say, I, as a large corporate, want to transfer money from Mexico to the US. So I'm going to on-ramp at Bitso. I'm going to choose to transfer in USDC on Stellar. And I'm going to off-ramp actually with Circle themselves.
Yeah. Okay. And so by declaring that on the Fireblocks platform, does that restrict? I mean, what does that actually do in practice in technical terms?
In technical terms, it enables you to start transferring the assets and signing transactions. So, you're sending the asset to an exchange. Okay. That's then being transferred to a different currency. That's then being sent to across borders to a different provider, and then it's being off-ramp.
But if I've got two parties, I've got the sender and the recipient. They're both using the Fireblocks platform. Do they both? Is that how it works?
Yeah. For certain flows, and then for other flows, you're sending to your account in a different country across different currencies. So there's different flavors. We have cross-border payments, we have remittances, we have kind of payouts and pay-ins, different use cases.
Right. Okay.
So lots to discuss.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So John, we've spoken a lot about the company. Right, and the product. I mean, it's definitely super interesting from our perspective because we've got lots of clients and they often mention Fireblocks and some have asked us to integrate and so on. So it's good to learn all about that.
Absolutely.
I'd like to learn a bit more about you.
Yeah, sure.
Right, so we met. I think it was an EY roundtable.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
And when you spoke, it was clear to me this is a guy who knows what he's talking about. Right?
I hope so.
and I don't. We have a lot of people in the space, and we've come in later, so and so on. I had the impression that you had depth in terms of the answers you were giving, and that meant that you'd really been doing things for a long time and had sort of been through a lot.
Yeah, we've seen several bull markets and bear markets. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe tell us a bit about yourself, how you got into the space.
Sure.
How you arrived at.
Really by chance. So, I haven't got a technical background in university. I actually studied law and business. They were kind of the two areas that I went into, but always had kind of a keen interest in technology, whether it was like, having the latest games console or phone or, testing all of the latest tech. So always had that as an interest. And when I left university, I decided consulting was a good example of where to go into to see different industries, different tech, all that kind of stuff. So started in Deloitte. My first project, as it happens, was an AML remediation. So that's essentially where you go into a bank and you fix all of their documentation for KYC. So you see a lot of the inefficiencies around. They have many different investors who are investing across different funds. They have information in one place that they can't share with another. And so a lot of these structural inefficiencies. And one of the parts of that project was essentially assessing different types of technology that we could use to make that process more efficient. And the Irish member firm of Deloitte at that time had just completed its first blockchain project at the end of 2015 with a local bank called Bank of Ireland, which was it was a regulatory reporting project. And based on that, we essentially looked to see if blockchain as a technology could fit this KYC use case. And ended up working with 4 of the largest asset servicing banks in the world to assess whether they could share KYC primitives, attest to certain pieces of information, and really kind of see.
I remember these kind of projects.
Yeah. I mean, they're still happening now, right? With the decentralized identity movement, but really, it was looking at the primitives of sharing information and owning your information. And off the back of that, just by chance, we managed to get funding from Deloitte to start a center of excellence for blockchain based out of Dublin. So I was lucky to be one of the kind of first team members who worked in there. And really that was the start of working with banks on their digital asset strategy. At that time, it was their blockchain roadmap. It was working on the kind of first types of production implementations that were happening globally in enterprise settings. So with DNVGL, which is one of the largest certification companies in the world. And then really we kind of built up a team that had a really good expertise both on the business side, but also on the technical side as well. And then I had a chance to move to Consensus, who I'm sure you're well aware, one of the kind of leading lights in the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's where the interest in the space just really, it deep dive, building, infrastructure like MetaMask and Infura and working on some of the kind of leading enterprise blockchain projects at that time. And I've been pretty much hooked ever since.
Okay, amazing. And Consensus, I guess, is a company that's obviously been very active and influential in the space, and all sorts of, through the product and the project work and so on. What was your particular involvement? What sort of?
Yeah, sure. So we came in as a delivery team or a delivery organization. So the goal for our hub, which we grew to about 40 people, was to work on the kind of large scale enterprise projects. So I worked on I know that you've had VACT on previously on one of the podcasts. So there was VACT on the trading side and there was Comgo on the trade finance side. So I worked in product on the Comgo project actually for nearly 18 months. So kind of building out as a BA and later as a proxy PO, building out some of those workflows. And then also had the chance to work with some really like bright minds in the advisory space that we had. John Hallahan, for example, is now a managing director with the GTCC. working with banks on kind of building their digital asset strategy as well. So had a flavor of the product side, but then also more on the consulting side. And really it was just, across those two projects that you get different experience to the Ethereum ecosystem, to what banks are thinking, and made me move back into consulting actually prior to Fireblocks, where I worked in EY for a couple of years as one of their blockchain leads in Ireland. So explains why I was at the round table.
Right. Okay. Is that Paul Bodie's team? Is that related to that?
So, but Paul leads the global team, and then each country will have its leads it's assigned. So, one of actually the founding team members from Deloitte, Killian, who's now a partner in EY, I had the chance to work with him again and kind of build out the blockchain projects that we were working on. So took that opportunity to go and work with him again, which is great. And then when the opportunity with Fireblocks came up, it's kind of something that I couldn't pass up to kind of get really back into the SaaS side of the space again.
So what was it about the Fireblocks? What was it about Fireblocks?
Yeah, I mean, we'd had a lot of client engagements and interactions on the custody side where I'd come across Fireblocks. And a lot of our technical team would have held them in very high regard. And one of my former colleagues from Deloitte, as it happens, Mick, was a sales director in Fireblocks. So he'd kind of mentioned about the opportunity, and that's kind of how it came by word of mouth. So I think the one thing in the space, and I'm sure you see it as well, is that some of the people who are in the technology early stages now that you would have worked with in the past, they just go on to amazing things, right? It's like I've got colleagues who are working with the BI, former colleagues working with the BIS. So, the DTC that I mentioned. Yeah. I know John Woods, who was on your podcast, is a former colleague of mine from Consensus. So, having that network of people in the space, it's pretty good. I was
speaking to someone yesterday at a bank, actually, that we haven't worked with before. And he reminded me that we'd met in 2016 when I was doing invoice financing, tally sticks, went through the Barclays Accelerator. So that's... You just constantly bump into the same people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's still a small world.
It's a small world, and I think it's great that I think the people who are real builders in the space have really found their place across a lot of companies, which I think is great.
Yeah. Okay, good. John, that's it's really interesting. Before we end the podcast, a question that I ask all the guests.
Sure.
Have you got any content to recommend? It can be a movie, it can be a book, anything that's kind of inspired you or that sort of caught you?
Yeah, sure. Like I think the medium that this is kind of ironic being on a podcast, the medium that I listen to most is podcasts. So I think two, which are really good. The first one is Bankless, which I'm sure everyone knows. So I think some of their episodes that they have, some of the guests they have are great. Yeah. I think one which is really interesting that I've been listening to recently is Blockchain Ireland, which is the interest body in Ireland that kind of manages blockchain affairs, have a new podcast called Blockchain Leader Insights. So they've got government officials on. John has been on. They have global head of custody at BNY Mellon has been on as well. So I think that's been a really good local slant from being Irish in that perspective. And then I think in terms of thought leadership and eminence, I think a lot of the stuff that's being produced by JP Morgan based on Project Guardian, so kind of the summaries of their projects and the reasons they're using certain type of primitives like Axelar on the messaging side and the stuff they're working on with interoperability. I think as someone who's working in the space, that kind of content is really valuable as well. So
I'll check that one out. Bankless is interesting. I was listening to an episode this morning with, I can't remember the guy's name, is one of the Ethereum researchers. And it's about this concept of basically through the zero knowledge roll-ups, how the space has kind of become, you're kind of losing composability because it's becoming fragmented.
Yeah.
The Ethereum ecosystem becomes fragmented. And you've got the roll-ups and they're kind of competing with each other.
Yeah, they are.
For liquidity and for applications and so on. And he was talking about this concept of a shared, not the prover, the shared sequencer.
Okay.
Right? It's a bit of a mind-boggling concept, but he basically, he said that there's one part of what they do, which if we could bring that together, then actually the whole thing just becomes a lot more powerful and a lot more in sync.
Okay, right? Interesting.
Yeah, so yeah, if you listen to the podcast, you get to that one at some point.
Yeah. That'll probably be one for me later today.
Okay, John, very good. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Applied Blockchain podcast. Make sure you follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter for more updates. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please let us know by leaving a review and clicking subscribe. Until next time.